Hi, welcome back to the shed. In this video I show you how I've built this seat plate for my custom BMW R80. I've built it in 3 steps. I first built a template, then I've built the actual seat plate, and then a bracket that I welded in the back of the rear frame. And now get ready, because I recently received this package in the mail, which is a 4mm thick aluminum plate. I could swear that was much straighter the last time I checked. Once I had the plate on the rear frame, I noticed that the frame had quite a bend in it, which creates this triangular gap. In case you're wondering, it's still the original rear frame, but 10 centimeters shorter. If you want to see how that works, I'm going to link you the video below. But before you go and watch that, we need to figure out how to deal with this gap. Since it's the first seat I'm building, I had a hard time imagining what it would look like after upholstering. So I had to get some help. Moin Nickel, na? Wie sieht's aus bei dir? Nickel is a good friend of mine who has built quite a few bikes himself, and he works with metal every day, which is why I'm always grateful for his advice.
Das ist halt auch so ein Ding, da würde ich auch 2-3 Stunden vorsitzen. Was ich auch immer gerne mache, ist einfach Pappschablone.
The tips Nickel gave me were perfect because I had created quite a few mental barriers in my head already about messing up the fitment, warping the plate while welding. I focused so much on the things that could go wrong that his advice to simply start with a template helped me to get the ball rolling. Ciao! I already noticed that making a cardboard template is a very good use of time because it gives me so much more clarity of what I actually want to do. Here are a few tips that I've learned along the way to build your own cardboard template. First, look at other builds and see how other people have done it, how they've shaped their seats, how they've shaped their seat bases, and go for styles that you like and rear frames that are relatively similar to yours. Just get inspired and come up with your own ideas. Once you have that, take a picture from the side of your motorcycle and start drawing your ideas on it, either with an iPad or on your computer, to see what you like, what works and what doesn't work with your bike. Once you have a design or two that you like, start making a template and try to get it as close as possible to what you want the finished seat to look like. When building the template, I started with the base plate, and while doing that, I noticed quite a few things that I had to consider when building the actual seat. For example, that the rear frame gets narrower towards the front and these screws actually stick out a little bit. So it's probably smart to cover these up, and that will also make a nicer transition to the tank lip because I want the seat to probably sit flush with this lip. Making a template, but especially looking at how other seats are formed, has given me so much more clarity about how I want to approach this gap. And in case you need some inspiration, I've created a Pinterest board with a collection of seats that I've liked. Link is down below. To me, it seems like the best option to follow the line of the frame with a plate and cover the gap with the upholstering. You'll see in a second what I mean. Once I knew that, I could think about how to shape the individual pieces. I probably want to cut it right here where this bar ends. When you work on the form for the seat base, I would recommend you to follow the line of the rear frame and have the plate sit right on top of it, maybe even 1 or 2 millimeters inside, so that once the seat is upholstered, it sits nicely on top of the rear frame and doesn't hang over the edges. Okay, so the base plate is done, and what I now need to figure out is how I'm going to make this transition from the tank, which has this kind of like oddly shaped lip. To do that, I've decided to also build a template for the top part of the seat. And a few things have helped me here immensely. Since the seat top has this 3-dimensional shape, I've used a little trick that I've seen Paul Brody use, which is to use 1.6mm aluminum filler rod, which I stick to the cardboard pieces that I've cut out. And that way I could actually bend the cardboard and it would stay in place. that is what it looks like at the moment. At this point, I realized I made a little mistake. What I've just noticed is that by doing 5 centimeters all around, I'm recreating this drop that I actually don't really want to have. So what I'm thinking is going straight from here and a little bit higher all the way, meeting it right here. So my advice to you would be to determine the top line of the seat, create that with filler rod or any other way, and then just fill in the gap to the base plate with cardboard. Nice. All right, this has taken quite a while. It's just taking your time, going back and forth, double checking, seeing what you actually like and trying out, because this is the stage where you have nothing to lose. Just see what resonates with you and just take your time with this process. I guess now it's time to start fabricating the base plate. And I have to say, I have actually been pushing this off for quite a few days now. First, I didn't really feel like starting at all. Now I'm pushing off building the base because there are a few things that I'm kind of like struggling with. For one, I'm not sure whether I should bend the main part or just weld it. When thinking about welding it, I fear that it might warp and then I have a plate that kind of like jiggles from left to right. So that's the one thing. And then also getting the fitment right is something that probably once I start isn't too hard, but now just like constantly think of it, I'm just like too much in my head. Well, I should probably have just bought 2 plates of aluminum. Now I only have 1, so it's basically the only shot I have at the moment, at least. That would be something I would do next time, and you might want to consider the same. Just getting a second plate to reduce the pressure a little bit, because I got this off eBay, and eBay is actually a great place to buy relatively small amounts of materials for a reasonable price. The only downside with eBay is that you often have to dig very deep into the product descriptions to find out which specific alloy you're gonna get with your material. If you don't know why that is important yet, not all metals can be used equally for custom bike building. So I've made a video about that specifically, which I'm gonna link you right here. The plate that I got is classified as 5754 aluminum. It is 100 by 40 centimeters, 4 millimeters thick, and this cost me about 30 bucks. When you decide that you want to build your seat plate out of metal, you could either go with steel or aluminum, and I went with aluminum because it allows me to use a thicker plate without adding too much weight. For example, in this case, I can go with a 4 millimeter thick aluminum plate that adds strength and stability to the bike instead of a just 2 millimeter thick steel plate. Want to put the seat back on, see where this actually lines up. Nice, that is exactly the same point. Right, I'm just going to use some double-sided tape to secure the last piece right here. That is looking very nice. I'm gonna clean it up. Part number 2. We have that little issue, but then also, as you can see, this little gap, that is 3 millimeters. I was thinking about making a cutout where the bracket is so that the front plate would actually sit a little lower, but I wasn't sure how that would actually affect the stability. All those things that I have no idea how they will play out. So I'm actually not sure whether the gap will actually be visible after it's upholstered. So what I could also do is lift up the back, so I have a gap all around, and then hope that the leather will actually cover all of that. Since I was unsure whether I could do this, I called Nikhil again, asked him what he would do, and he was like, yeah, you can do this, because when the seat gets upholstered, there is going to be some foam that gets wrapped around the seat to hide any imperfections and stuff like that. So that and the leather will hopefully cover the 2mm big gap, especially when I screw it down and it gets pulled against the rear frame. So hopefully that works out. So what I'm going to do now is clamp those down onto the rear frame so they don't move anymore, and then tag this together. After making sure that everything was straight, I clamped down the plate, and make sure that you find a place where you don't bend the plate. One last check that everything sits straight. The two plates line up nicely. I think we're ready to weld. Before I start welding the seat plate, I'm gonna dial in my machine and the settings on these two little pieces that I've cut from the same material. And that's just to make sure that the machine is set up properly, that everything works before I actually start welding on there. For TIG welding, and especially for TIG welding, aluminum preparation is key. The first step is to wire brush the area that you're gonna weld on with a stainless steel small wire brush, going from one side all the way across, not going back and forth, to give you a good surface to weld on. And then the second step is to use some pure acetone and a microfiber cloth to just clean that area from all sorts of grease and dirt. Also make sure that you clean your filler rod, and then it's time to tack this together. The welder I'm using is an entry-level AC/DC TIG welder from a company called Stahlwerk. They do good quality entry-level products, and this one can go up to 200 amps, which is super nice. You can weld carbon steel, stainless steel and aluminum with it. And if you want, you can hook up a foot pedal, which is on the other side now. I've upgraded to a 20-liter argon bottle because I ran through the 10-liter argon bottles so quickly. And for the torch, I used the standard torch that came with the machine. This is a WP26F with a number 7 cup and a 2.4mm yellow tungsten. For these tags now, I had the machine set to 110 amps. Obviously, this is different from machine to machine, but I could have gone even a little bit higher. It's still a little bit too cold, but I think now when I actually weld this, the plate's gonna heat up and it's gonna be a little bit better. I need to take a little bit more time when I get going, but then that shouldn't be a problem. That got very hot at my hand, but ooh, I like this. Could I have accumulated so much material, so I'm just gonna put another 4mm bar across that I can rest my hand on. Dusty's course definitely paid off, and in case you want to learn how to TIG weld, I'm gonna link the course that I've used down below. It's a great course, and I've made 2 videos about my learning experience, so if you want to check out what you get and how the course is structured, click the link below. I can highly recommend the course, and it helps out the channel. And I guess now we can weld the bottom side. Oh, I noticed that it did warp quite a bit to one side. To hopefully reduce that, I've now clamped it back onto the bike. I don't know if that actually helps, but yeah, what I think I need to do with the rest of the welds is to go in smaller bits and let it cool down more before doing the next little bit. I was able to bend it back a bit, so I think in the end, if it's still slightly warped, it won't be a problem to bend it into shape. But I want to get as close as possible, so let's try to minimize heat this time. I finished welding this up, and going in little steps helped reduce the warping. It still moved a little bit, but I just would put it on a table upside down and bend it a little bit back. So now there is no real distortion going on, so we can move on to the next two little parts, which will probably be the trickier ones. I have already cut the next piece out of acrylic sheet. The next piece is cut out and cleaned up, so this fits almost perfectly. I need to make a few little adjustments. That is close enough. I was thinking about how I could get a good gap between the lip and the next plate that isn't too big, but also consistent all around, because just freehanding it is a little tricky. So what I came up with was to use this 1mm thick acrylic sheet. Just trying to make this top edge flat so that the next piece can sit straight on here. I think we can weld this up now. I went down with the amps to 115 and I noticed it was a little bit cold and it's not shiny as it should be. This is a very good example for telling whether your weld is actually too cold. Compared to this, I went down from 125 to 115 amps, and you can see that in the beginning it has this dull finish, which is an indication for the weld being too cold. As I welded, the plate got hotter and hotter, and you can see how the color of the weld actually changes once it reached a good temperature. Alright, the welds are pretty solid. This is not my most beautiful weld, but I'm still happy. I'm gonna let this cool down on the bike now and then take it off, weld the backside very, very carefully to prevent it as much from warping as possible. So let's wait a second and then do the backside. So I'm gonna leave it like this. It has now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weld areas. Let's see if it still fits. Nice, that still looks pretty straight. All right, now we can cut the last piece. After checking the fitment, I found it quite helpful to use a fine black marker to mark the areas that I wanted to take away. So when I was using the belt grinder, I knew exactly where and how much material I had to take away. Very happy with how that looks at the moment. I've made these two little marks right here. So when I would place it back on here to check the fitment, I would always place it the same. And now that I have these marks right here, I can exchange this piece for a 1mm thick aluminum plate, which will give me the option of not burning away the plastic. All right, let's see how this goes. I hope it holds. I'm not sure how I could fix this. Could maybe do something like this. I tried to come up with a solution to clamp this down, even though there's nothing that I could really clamp it down with, because clamping this down gives me a much better feeling, because I don't have to worry about warping. Warping is one of the biggest, I would say, struggles or fears even with building the seat plate. So far, I'm very happy with the fitment. So now I just need to make sure that the last piece also goes on well. It turned out so much better than I thought it would turn out. We need to still weld the back part. Now I'm getting scared. Shouldn't be a big problem, but you never know. With the last weld on the seat plate being done, I just quickly wanted to say thank you to you, Dusty, in case you watch this. I can't thank you enough for showing me how to do this. Look at how nice it sits on the rear frame here. And then the front has a good little gap all around, which is relatively equal. It has a slight gap to the tank right here, which is also good because the leather is going to wrap around. And all in all, I'm so happy with the shape of this plate. All right, now that the plate is ready, we need to put some brackets on the bike to secure the plate or the seat later on. And I sat here for quite some time because there are actually quite a few things to consider. Who remembers the battery box? Now it's getting back into business. I need to figure out a way how I mount the seat plate now and then also mount the battery box and the rear fender without getting into a conflict. With all of these things, I need to consider that I can take off everything individually. That would be the goal. It might be the case that I first have to take off the rear fender, then the seat, and then the battery box, something like that. But there needs to be a sequence to it so that you can actually reach all the screws that you want to put in. And for that, I came up with a plan. Let me show you. And again, I asked my friend Nikhil for advice, and he recommended to go with M6 screws. You could also go with M5 and use 6 screws for the seat. I've cut a bracket that fits right in here using the acrylic sheet to make a template, and then I cut it out with my angle grinder and used the bench grinder to just make it fit perfectly and put a little chamfer on there so that it sits nice and flush. So this is going to be the rear mounting point for the seat right here next to the fender, and also is going to be the mounting point for the fender. That's going to be 2 in the back. Then we need 4 more, and I want to keep this bar in here because it gives strength and stability to the rear frame, but I need to extend it a little bit to make it horizontal and actually usable. And I'm going to use these areas right here and there for the seat, and then I can use something in the middle right here for the rear of the battery box. Right here in the front, I also need mounting points for the front of the battery box and the seat again. Since the front mounting points right here and there are heavily dependent on the shape of the battery box, I don't want to put anything in there yet that I later have to modify or take out again once the battery box is actually built. So I'm gonna leave that open for now. But since I still want to show you how I'm gonna secure the seat to the rear frame in general, I'm gonna show you with this example of the back bracket and put the 2 screws in here, because I'm going to use rivet nuts that sit inside the seat plate, and the principle is basically the same for the other brackets in case you already want to build your own seat. Just in case if you're interested in these things, I've welded this with my CK Worldwide 17 style torch with a number 8 stubby cup and a 2.4 gas screen in there for the 2.4 grade tungsten. For these little tags, I ran the machine at 63 amps and used the foot pedal, and the gas pressure is 10 liters per minute. But as always, these are just settings that work for me and this type of work. It's just to give you an understanding, because I wished someone would have told me how to set up the machine for different kind of scenarios. Obviously, every machine is different, but you get somewhat of an idea of how you have to set your machine up. From there, you just experiment a little bit and you figure out very quickly what works and what doesn't, and just use a piece of scrap metal and try it out before you work on your bike. I did the same just to set up the machine properly. That's the center line, and now the rear fender is 16 centimeters wide, 15.5 to be exact, but I'm going to give it a little room. So I'm going to mark 8 centimeters to each side. I'm measuring from here to where I want to have the screw. For things like this, an automatic center punch is so handy because you don't have to hold your center punch, use a hammer. You can just push this in and then it center punches itself. If you want to get one, I'm going to link it down below, because I thought this was a gimmick, but it's actually very nice. All right, I'm going to drill a 3mm pilot hole and then go to 6mm. I don't actually know if it's smart to drill through a steel plate and then into aluminum. Use the line perfectly. All right, now I need to remember to put in the rivet nuts this way. Make sure, mental note. Here's how you use rivet nuts. So the rivet nuts look like this, and to install them you need rivet nut pliers. They come with different attachments for different size rivet nuts. I've installed the M6 attachment. And all you have to do now is just open those up, screw on the rivet nut, insert it completely into the hole, and then you just squeeze this together. To take the pliers back off after it's squeezed into place, you just screw the pliers off with this wheel, and there you go. You have a perfect strong thread in your C-plate. This is the top side, and this is the bottom side. Alright, so that is how I'm gonna do the other mounting points as well. Just want to show you this as a reference, and I'm gonna show you the other ones when I actually build the battery box. And yeah, I'm very happy with how this turned out. This was quite a challenge in the beginning, but I'm happy with the result. And if you want to see how I've shortened the rear frame, watch this video next.